year reading room. Oh, that's what that face looked like. So, happy 2026. We are not going into the new year worried. I saw some ad on the internet where somebody's laying relaxing on their back, telling them this is what you need to help whatever. And it was like, for it. Like it looked like it was a meditative position, but here was the person's face. Not really that inviting. All right, let's get to it. I have my coffee / hot cocoa. I have my book. It is day 293. It is January 1st, 2026. Thanks for joining me here in the reading room. We've been here since 2023. Let's just get to it. I just want to say how much more. Oh, you know what? We should have just finished the chapter. As Orlando Patterson stated in his misogynist rant, Race, Gender, and Liberal Fallacies, published in the op-ed section of the New York Times, thanks to this drama, we have entered an important new phase in the nation's discourse on gender relations, and it goes well beyond the enhanced realization by men that the complaints of women must be taken seriously. Implicit in these hearings was an overdue questioning of the legalistic, neo-Puritan and elitist model of gender relations promoted by the dominant school of American feminists. Point your fingers, assholes. That's exactly what that sounds like. I'm just going to point my finger. Yeah, exactly. Misogynistic. Whatever. Contrary to Patterson's assertion that the hearings were a ritual of inclusion, indicating public affirmation that blacks belong in the system, that the culture of slavery is dead, we were witnessing yet another plantation drama where the labor and bodies of black folks were made to serve the interests of a system that has no intention of fostering and promoting the social and political growth of black people or eradicating racism and white supremacy. Yeah, so why do you demand more from Anita Hill? Why does anyone demand more from Anita Hill? They set the narrative and then they set themselves up to call the narrative and be very philosophical about the narrative. But in the end, nobody's denying that it's promoting the power in charge. It always does. Visually, what millions of Americans saw as they watched the hearings was the representation of white supremacist capitalist patriarchy as it truly is. There was no racial or sexual diversity on the committee, none that inclusion that would indicate shared positions of equality within the existing social structure, which Patterson alludes to in his commentary. So why would Anita Hill play along? And it was more than evident, both visually and in terms of their demeanor, that bonds of white supremacy and maleness transcended differences of political position among the white male Senate committee members. Among the white male Senate committee members, those bonds could extend to and include Clarence Thomas, because he so fundamentally allied himself with the interests of white supremacists capitalist patriarchy. They're only forced into that position eventually, and it came, what? A good 50 years later plus. We were witnessing yet another plantation drama where the labor and bodies of black folks were made to serve the interests of a system that has no intention of fostering and promoting the social political growth of black people or eradicating racism and white supremacy. Those bounds could extend and include Clarence Thomas? How? How? Not on your life. Not on your life. Recently, white-controlled and dominated mass media has constructed and promoted the fiction that black conservatism is something new, fostering as well the concomitant assumption that it is not tolerated in black life. Hence, understanding white folks, both liberal and conservative alike, must protect the dissident voices of black conservatives from those more commonly radical black voices that would censor and silence them. Yeah. Just like the slave master's prime servant, butler, head of the house, whatever you want to call him. I call all this chocolate delight. I know. Not chocolate enough for me either. Recently, white-controlled and dominated mass media has constructed and promoted the fiction that black conservatism is something new, fostering as well the concomitant assumption. All right, hence understanding white folks, both liberal and conservative alike, must protect. All right, I said that. Yes, so that's what they ended up doing. I mean, who hears anything from Clarence Thomas, right? So what do you end up doing? Put in a position of power, real power. All eyes were on you. You learned how to conduct yourself for a Senate committee, right? And pick out the flaws of Anita Hill's argument for the narrative, in favor of the narrative. And you end up being censored and silenced. Nobody hears from him anymore. And that's how they do it. And so when you're censored and silenced and drugged and part of the alcohol system, that's easy to introduce to men, a little harder to introduce to women, but not if you put a good-looking man on the end of that line. It sure as hell is not. You'll be drinking up a store's worth of alcohol after a marriage that failed. Wouldn't you? All part of the narrative. Put the bait of a good-looking man on the end of the line. Until you're hanging at the end of your line. In reality, black folks have always known that many of us were conservative, and all too often conservative political viewpoints have determined the nature of black rebellion and reform. It's white folks who have just recently discovered the militant black conservative and recognize that he or she can be a powerful spokesperson for agendas that serve the interest of mainstream white culture. When journalists suggest, as one did in the October issue of New York Magazine, that one of the most important victories of the hearing was that the nation was treated to a parade of blacks who, for once, weren't crack dealers, athletes, welfare mothers, or any of the other stereotypes, but solid citizens, fine friends, and excellent character witnesses for the two principles. It is obvious that the audience that comprises this nation is white. This comment confirms that ultimately the Thomas hearings were not only a public political spectacle orchestrated by whites, we call it a narrative, but that whites were indeed the intended audience. The rest of us were merely voyeurs. And that's why that in the end, that black man is going to be censored and silenced because he is not part of that white audience. And it's really interesting too because so then who is? Well, more and more it became what you see, which is superheroes who are white. Right? I mean, isn't that all we see? Marvel Comics, that's it. So you Marvel Comics strip nobody, give me back my sons. My sons. When journals suggest, as one did in October issue of New York, I read that. Many black folks can testify that the Thomas hearings seem to have a profound impact on many white Americans. Now, and that's the same thing. This is no doubt. So this is nothing new to black people. A narrative, right? A narrative proposed by white supremacists, and they're standing around looking at other people like, well, hello. And I get it, but you can't get it unless you're immersed in it, as black people are. And that's the thing. I mean, what else do you want other than to have white people or people who are generally more and more light-skinned, right? What do you want them to do other than be profoundly impacted? And that was simply a hearing. What more do you want? Isn't that what every movement is about? I want to profoundly impact you by what this scenario is. And, this is a great summary. It's a great debate and discourse. It's a great discourse. I don't know how many people could get to this level of discourse on the case, which is why I also went to that conference, because it was all on the heels of this. So, yeah, 1992. Because I got accepted to Wayne State in 1998. I have got to get this hawker out of the back of my throat. Hold on one sec. I hate those stupid things. Okay. Got half of it. Often fearful of black people and issues concerning race, the Thomas hearings provided many white folks with an issue that they could talk to black people about. It was a safe way for them to talk about race and gender. Before the Thomas hearings, no strange white man had ever attempted to talk with me about his desire for attractive black women. Yet several white men initiated conversations with me on airplanes, in lines at the bank, and taxi cabs where they could share that they identified with Thomas, that they too found Anita Hill attractive and could see why Thomas would approach her. As one young white man put it, he was only doing what a man does. And, you know, that is, I don't know to what extent that is only a white man's theory. Probably, certainly, a theory of black men who were brought up in, you know, similar ways to be more misogynistic, right? But that's the whole thing. The whole thing is in the turn of a phrase right here. And I don't know if the author's going to get to this or not, but it's totally in a turn of a phrase, which is that they could see why Thomas would approach her. That's the turn of a phrase. Thomas didn't approach her. Thomas demeaned her. If she had likened to it his comments about pubic hairs anywhere, no matter what, if she had likened to it, and this was the whole thing I remember, I wanted a discourse on Anita Hill. That's what I wanted. This is still really good. The whole thing is really good. It doesn't need to be all about Anita Hill. That's for sure. But there could be a whole book about that, and there probably was. But yeah, he didn't approach her. He demeaned her. And he wanted to see if she was going to take the bait. And then they brought it into the courtroom. And they wanted to see if she was going to take the bait in a different way. Was she going to act militant? And you know what we mean by militant? We mean primitive. We mean off the record, off the charts, all of it. A number of black females I know have said they have been the objects of unprecedented assaults, both verbal and physical, by white males since the Thomas hearings. Concurrently, the Thomas hearings exacerbated overall social bashing of black females and professional black females in particular. Recently, about to give a lecture at the University of Arizona, I spotted a young black female, sitting in the audience and greeted her with the warmth and sisterly regard. And think about that on Anita Hill's shoulders. So she's got all the things that she should have done right in her face. And that to me is exactly when that really abusive behavior became acceptable by black men and white men on black women. You abandon your black man. You abandon your bankroll. And you aren't anything to be discussed anyway. You know what I mean? You're the topic of conversation? I don't think so. We'll put you right back in your place. And not you, Anita Hill. But you're going to see the fallout on black women because of what you did in their name. I remember that was when the police brutality became out in the open for a second. Like, we've got this. And then it was like, what? Because many black folks can testify that the Thomas hearings seemed to have a profound impact on many white Americans. Because we didn't see it this way. We walked in and saw chocolate mounds, you walked in and saw slavery. Which is interesting, isn't it? That's interesting. That's so interesting. The tombs of the Egyptians. They were building tombs. Why would they be building tombs for themselves when they believed that they were? This is just an extension of the gas chambers, isn't it? Or a predecessor to the gas chambers, wasn't it? Those were tombs. Those are burial mounds, aren't they? And if you believe that, again, since we've been talking in early birds, it is clear to me that there is just such a disturbance in the earth and the mining. So much so that people who are mining are deformed and left there for life. That gives you the Slavs. And those were the Slavs. Those were. And those pyramids were likely tombs, weren't they? Babylonian tombs for a resurgence of Egyptian gods. All the way there from Clarence Thomas. See the early birds in Bookless classroom. All that from, and could see why Thomas would approach her. You know, isn't that just a like, you just don't you just want to be like, you son of a bitch. And that was Bell Hooks taking on exactly what that perspective was. And then it's like, oh, you could approach me by saying pubic hair to me. Now what are they going to push the limit on? In retaliation for Anita Hill. Right? A number of black females I know have said they have been the objects of unprecedented assault. Concurrently, the Thomas hearings exacerbated overall social bashing of black females and professional black females in particular. That's for sure. That's for sure. And she only called it social bashing. That is the whole irony of the whole thing as well, too. And as I was talking about, Rosewood came out at the same time. So here you've got people who are trying to speak out again. And the irony is that there's a debate and it's between blacks and whites. I think a black man and a white man. Because the black man has to keep his cool. He can't register the atrocity that is happening fully because he'll lose his cool. And he will be that primitive man. And everyone knows it. Everyone knows that feeling. When am I going to become just primitive on your ass, medieval on your ass? Right? So, yeah. And so in Rosewood, I think that there was that debate, right? Debate between a black man and a white man, which was confusing for me at the time, but not as I read this. That is the debate. The debate is, I have a pair of chocolate tits there, and instead of getting it, we're debating it right in front of the chocolate tits, right? Or by many extensions, The same thing in the lynching. There's the black man and the white man debating about it when the atrocity, but what is the black man to do other than debate? What is the white girl to do other than be civil? You know, the whole thing. I have children. Don't get me in your debates, your war amongst gods when I have children. And if that doesn't pull at your heartstrings, I don't know what does. Don't get me in your debate, in your war over gods. I have children. Recently about to give a lecture at the University of Arizona, I spotted a young black female sitting in the audience and greeted her with warmth and sisterly regard. At the end of my lecture, she came up to me and stated that she had not read my work, that a class assignment had compelled her attendance at the talk, but that she was glad she had come because my recognition of her had, as she put it, done a lot to restore her faith in black women, a faith that the Thomas hearings had shaken. She was referring to many black women, especially those who were seen on television opposing and denouncing Hill while supporting Thomas. While the hearings did not signal the death of feminism, they did dramatize the triumph of sexist justice. And I remember that too. It was really a triumph, though, also, I think, for Anita Hill, in my mind. And that was, let the girl handle it the way she's going to handle it. She's in the spotlight. The girl knows what she's doing because she clearly handles things with class. Fist bump. The hearings were a brutal reminder to advocates of feminism, to all of us who are concerned with progressive agendas, that conservative politics will rule the day if there is not sufficient protest, subversion, and rebellion. Many groups, including feminists, have been galvanized to action by the hearings. Progressives can only hope that the spirit of rebellion and resistance will not be transitory, but will serve to foster a climate of critical vigilance and radical action that will once again make the transformation of this culture into a truly democratic and just society a meaningful agenda, a cause worth struggling for. No. The cause worth struggling for is democracy, which is equality as dictated by your interests. Right? I suppose if you were to boil this down to the fact that men have an interest in capitalism and women in their children, then you've probably got a big debate on your hands. Then you probably got a big problem, right? As our interests lie. But if those men are not carrying the interests of their wives into that public domain of democracy, whatever you want to call it, I mean, you could call it government, but it's a democratic government. If you don't carry that in there, the opinions of your wives, and I understand that's what a republic is, right? But a republic is not really what I'm getting at. Because I would have a vote and a voice, where a republic simply has representatives from large areas. That's not what I'm talking about. And you're like, okay, city-state government bullshit. And you know it. And you know it. It's the feeling of democracy without ever being democratic. It's an illusion of democracy. Same thing with our military. And what ends up happening to this country as a military superpower. I have no say in that, but yet I get all of the fallout of that. I've never had a word to say about that. If I did, you would remember my tears in 1999, the Persian Gulf War, 1998, the Persian Gulf War, when that started. And here we are. I have to look it up. Oh, come on. $1991. 1990. Well, that certainly was the period of time when these conservatives that Bell Hooks is talking about in that chapter were really consolidating. There's a first place and a second place in the hierarchy. If you're okay with the second place in the hierarchy, come on aboard. Second place pays well. Reconstructing Black Masculinity, Chapter 6. So that's where we are going. We've only been here for 30 minutes, but that sounds good for New Year's. It's a laissez-faire day, as we've said. And but still, our minds are bright. Our minds are crisp. See the Bookless classroom and the early bird classroom for our Christmas message, our holiday message on giving and peace. Thanks so much for joining me. I will see you here back on Tuesday. I need to see that date. I didn't see what the date was. Tuesday is the Epiphany. Tuesday is the day of the insurrection on our country. And it is so, again, second time, don't really like using this word very much, but sometimes it's apropos. That is so apropos, isn't it? The Epiphany and the insurrection. Who's getting epiphamized? Thanks so much for joining me here. It is day 293. It is January 1st. Oh my goodness gracious, we did not. No effing way. Oh, how horrible. How horrible. And we never changed it to January 1st. Early birds came and went. Oh, hold on. We have to do it right on camera. Early birds came and went. Bookless came and went. Nobody said a word in the chat. Change the calendar. I'm hurrying. Hold on. I do have it right here. And that by any standard of organization, when you keep it, now it is year after year with a once a month visit. And you can pull it up that quickly. It is day 293 in the classroom, and it is January 1st, 2026. We are still not struggling to make your body, mind, spirit more healthier. We're just doing it. We're doing what comes naturally, and it isn't just simply scratching your back on a tree. Thanks for joining me here in the classroom.